Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Tax Collector. So, I went into this film because I randomly saw it on Hulu at some point while I was just kind of strolling by, and I was like, okay, a Shia LaBeouf film. Haven't seen Shia LaBeouf in a while. I remember the last thing that I saw him in was Fury, and coincidentally, the same person that is writing and directing this movie had worked on Fury and had worked with Shia LaBeouf. Hence why probably this director was wanting to just have Shia LaBeouf in this film somehow or another, and this character ended up just being who Shia LaBeouf played in this film for whatever reason. But it seems that people are kind of offended by this movie, by Shia LaBeouf being in this film, and I can understand that. Like, I just find it odd, like, we have a movie that has to kind of also, like, fit a stereotypical thing to do, which is a 15 años, if I'm saying that right, a Sweet 16 birthday party for David's daughter in this movie. Honestly, I didn't like that. So they couldn't have come up with just some interesting, like, it seems like the beginning of this movie started out really good, but then, like, the last 30 minutes of this movie, or really almost the second half, just kind of deflated the film, and we have an ending where they're supposed to, like, speed up things, and if anything, they're slowing things down, and that makes no sense to me. Um, there is a, like, the early stages of this film I can enjoy, like some of the lingo, like I thought that was really interesting. Like, this movie breaks down as an interesting piece up into a certain point where it just kind of, like, just becomes this kind of odd, like, film. Like, once we kind of get the Cornejo character in the movie, I'm just like, okay, this movie is just kind of getting very, like we have the boogeyman coming out and basically going and taking out this whole setup, and I'm like, man, we didn't even, like, we barely even scratched the surface on these guys doing what they're doing, and now we have to, like, we haven't had time to really invest with either David or Creeper or anybody yet, and then all of a sudden we're having to turn around and forcibly invest in them because we're watching this movie. Like, that's what happens when you have a really short film also, is just you don't have enough time to really, like, be like, man, I would have liked to marinate on them doing their whole process, and but we just kind of quickly turn around and just like, hey, plop, here's the villain, plop, here's just the battle for the rest of this movie, and I'm like, what the is this? Like, we just, like, we nixed the whole, like, amount of work that we all did for the beginning of this film to now just come up with the quickest ending that we can possibly do, and I just didn't enjoy that. I wish that they could have gone into making this like a mini series or something like that, like stretching this out a little bit longer. Like, I would have liked to see, like, there to be a build to Cornejo instead of just a like this weird drop-in kind of character that I could not take the time to invest in either the technical hero of this one, the one we are forced to root for here, or, like, I don't have time to marinate on the villain either. So it just creates a story that I just have to throw away. Because it's a throwaway movie. It's sad. Because there was some, like, the very beginning of this has some, like, potential. Like, I could see some stuff where it feels Like it feels like it is kind of ripping off some certain things. Like there's a moment where kind of Creeper is kind of doing a Scarface kind of thing, obviously, and I don't want to I don't want to diminish that there is stuff like that going on out there. Like there is like this Scarface kind of approach to things, and there is vicious deaths that are happening and whatever. Like, and I'm sorry if I am to insult some kind of culture or some kind of way of life of doing things or whichever. But yeah, but this movie just it just seemed like it was like stealing or ripping off a number of things that was to just not be well enough written in all actuality. But hey, maybe they got their money back for this movie. This movie might have been cheaply done, possibly. I'd hope so. But anyways, I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers about this film because I think it's about that time again. So let's go out our way to say it's about that double five time territory because it's about that time yet again to go into this thing called spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. Don't quite know exactly how I'm going to approach this movie, even though there's an obvious way to do it. Because there is a lot of stuff going through this film for a brief amount of time, and then they just all that disappears. So it's like, man, I'm gonna have to describe a lot of, and then all of a sudden, poof, all that stuff is now pointless after X amount of time in this movie because everything is going by so quickly. So let me pause for 1 second. All right. So we have, of course, David, who is to get up for his day and go on and see that his wife is to have a dream about her having her kids drowned, and she can't get to them because she is standing on top of water that is actually glass. Okay. So she's like banging on the glass, trying to get to her kids that are drowning. There's nothing she can do. Weird way to start out a movie, but okay, like, alright, like, that's an interesting kind of thing that they had to do for this film. Because they actually presented the imagery of what that technically looks like. And I thought that I was like, okay, that's kind of cool that they did that. So we transitioned to all of a sudden have David's daughter who's losing a tooth. And so David is like, let me see. I'm like, yeah, I think that tooth is loose. And he yanks it out. And so she's like, oh, well, can I get like $10 from the tooth fairy? David's like, $10? I don't know about that. So we go on and, of course, have David's sister coming to this quinceaños, and I'm hope I'm saying that correctly because I don't want to like step on anybody's like way of saying things. Sweet 16, and so Delia, David's sister, is to make her way to this house, and so there might be some ill pronouncing here, so I'm hoping everybody's going to be okay with the way I pronounce certain names. If there's anything that I mispronounce, let me know in the comments below. There's probably nothing I'm going to be able to do about it because this is going to be a one-off thing, but hey, like if I ill pronounce something, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people that are going to tell me how to pronounce it correctly, which sorry, I won't, like, I'm not gonna do, but, like, it's okay, because I know there's those people. It's alright. So, we go on and we have, of course, David making his way out to get with Creeper so they can go off to their jobs. Um, so David is weirdly going on and buying this one candy bar from this girl, but we end up finding out that that candy bar is to not just be some candy bar, it's to be this kind of like coded message of a thing. I'm like, oh my god, like this is some James Bond like wow, all right. So David and Creeper are going into this business that I'm not even quite sure what exactly this business is. And I don't think even the people that run the business actually know what it is. We have a girl named Lupe who is to, of course, be, I think, David's cousin here. And so, really, she is to skim from the till. And Lupe's like, oh, you're not going to fire me. Like, I'm your cousin. And I would just be like, you know what? Like, I'm going to put a bullet hole in your leg. Like, I don't give a who you are. And so I'm, cause like you're taking money from me. It's what's going on here. So, and she's just saying, "Oh, just take it from my payday." I'm like, what would happen here if this girl just takes the whole entire till and runs off? Cause it's like, man, I can do whatever I want. I wanna go to Atlantic City and see if I can go and bet on black and win. So, anyways, pushing on. So, we have David and we have Creeper that is to meet up with a kind of new key holder who is to be a guy named Victor, who is to be coming from Big Llamas, I think it is. So, and the only reason why I think I can remember this is because they end up repeating it quite often in this film. So, really, Victor here is to kind of know how these guys are to how both David and Creeper are to kind of run things here, because since Victor is to be the kind of lead guy for his part of things, because the guy who was his key holder had died, we now go on and we have David who's kind of giving him the whole kind of thing that he tells everybody, where he's going on and telling him how things are run, how there are points when Victor should never go on and come up light for his dealings. That if he is down money, he should go and rob a bank. He should go and like steal from his mother and to get that money for them. Because if this guy comes up short, he's probably going to come up dead. So, and he also kind of tells them kind of the hierarchy of things, where David is to mention that's like, hey, like, don't skim from the homies or the wizard, because they'll know, because they're freaking psychics. And so David is to go on and tell him this whole speech and so on and so forth. And we have Victor, who's kind of intimidated by Creeper, because Victor is to hear stories about Creeper and how he's basically the devil. And Creeper is just like, well, yeah, maybe I am, kind of thing. Because we end up having some certain visuals of Creeper going on and like dragging guys by the neck, or going and chopping these guys up in this tub and so on and so forth. Like, this guy has gone on to do some horrible things to people, supposedly, from what you can see here. There's kind of a Scarface moment where Creeper is going in and chopping somebody up in a tub somehow, somewhere, whatever. So we go on, and after this whole long stretch of a speech, we then go on and turn around and have both David and Creeper going to, of course, David's uncle Louis. Or Luis? I'm going to say Louis. Hopefully that's correct. David goes to his uncle, and then, of course, talking it out, and so it seems that this place that they're in is technically wired. So at some point in this conversation, we end up having them doing sign language, kind of telling them what's going on. So we, of course, asked David about the new guy, Victor, and the guy checks out, and they're like, oh, okay, so this guy isn't going to be some kind of, like, we can trust this guy. So we end up going on and having them continue to talk, and so we end up having these exchanges and like over sign language and so on and so forth. So David and Creeper go off after this, and so we find out that Creeper is kind of mixing it up with just a bunch of women. There's just like seemingly rows upon rows of like different, of course, women that I guess he's going through some app and meeting. And it's funny that also we have David, who of course is to have his wife's, I think his wife's sister, Favi, who is to mention she had met some guy on Tinder, and David's like, well, like, is the only reason why you went off and dated him is because he super liked you, or something like that. To where the girl is just like, well, hey, like, you laugh, but, like, it's the only way to, like, meet people, because, like, it's, you can't easily go on and find a girl like Alexis and just easily get married. It doesn't work that way for everybody. So we go on, and so we have also David, who is kind of seeing, like, the back of Creeper's kind of vehicle, and how he has a bunch of these, like, carrots and all this food and stuff, all this fruit and whatever and stuff. And so Creeper's saying, like, yeah, that's my diet. I've dropped like 10 pounds recently from eating all this stuff. And we end up having him at one point eating this like fish, and David is like, man, this smells like death. Like, this smells like you left a dead body in the car. And Creeper's like, hey man, it's fish. Like, man, I gotta keep my diet up. Like, so we go on and on about this whole diet thing. So we also have Creeper that's asking, like, David, why didn't he get an invitation for David's daughter's quinceaños? And David's like, well, you know you're coming. And Creeper's like, well, yeah, but like it would have been nice to just kind of get a invitation. So, like, for family, like, it's obvious, like, certain people are coming. But anyways, I guess it is what it is. So both David and Creeper are to go and start collecting from people, because that's, of course, what they do. So we go on here and have these guys start collecting, and so they end up going to this tattoo parlor to go and talk to Grumpy, and they end up asking him about the funeral that he had recently, and because they're kind of like seeing where this guy's head's at, because supposedly we had both David and Creeper. They had to kill like Grumpy's relative because of the decision that this guy had made, kind of had forced their hands, and they're kind of reiterating that to this guy. And they're kind of telling him, it's like, well, hey, when you're going to go out there, like, you're going to go out there, like, protected, and so on and so forth. And so, like, yeah, we're just kind of giving you a heads up. So, but we push on here, and we have both David and Creeper going on to a guy named Snoopy. And so Snoopy, like, I've kind of seen him in quite a few, like, movies. Like, I remember seeing him in, like, the Fast and the Furious film. Like, I've seen him in, like, a lot of films, but heaven forbid I actually know exactly pinpointing besides the one I just mentioned. Sadly, just because, like, it's a familiar face, but heaven forbid I know where the place is. So Snoopy goes on and is to talk to these guys, mention about Adderall, because it seems that certain people are just wanting Adderall because the prices are too high for anyone else to kind of deal with anything else. And so David is like, our prices are too high? And it's like, well, yeah, like, they're buying from another competitor. And so it's really just David pushing Snoopy to just, like, keep selling that stuff out there. It's like, who cares about the competition? Like, keep just selling your product. So all of a sudden we end up having, of course, at one point, we of course have Alexis, who's calling David, mentioning it seems that there is some other Mexican Kardashian girl who is preventing them from going on and getting a dress for their daughter's quinceaños. And so David is like, well, okay, like, I'll get there, and I'll have a word with, I guess, this girl's father to make them go away so we can go on and get this dress. So David arrives there and is just whisper sweet nothings into this one guy, forcing this guy to grab his daughter and run out of there so they can go on and get this dress. So we I'm trying to think here if there's almost everything that I've covered here. Oh, yeah. There's another spot here. So David and Creeper are to go to these one associates of theirs to find that there is a guy that I guess is to be a part of some gang called Bloods. I say that weirdly because so we evidently find out that this guy is to have beaten on this Blood character, this Blood gang member. I don't know what the polite way to say all this is. And I don't know the real true way of which to deliver this, so it's weird. So David has find out that supposedly his associate is to tell him that this Blood was to go on and have an affair with some woman that is to be of some homie of his. And so David is to go on and say, it's like, well, hey, man, like, I'm going to take this guy, this Blood, and I'm going to take him back to his gang to talk to Bones and kind of square things up. And if anything, like, we never go on and have somebody go after the guy. We have it to where the guy goes after his woman and kind of like sets her straight kind of thing. So we go on here and have this blood delivered to the Bloods, and so the leader of the Bloods, who I guess is a guy named Bone, is to talk to David and just say like, well, hey man, like, if anything, like, none of this was business. It was just some like personal vendetta that one of us like had, but I'm gonna bring your guy back to you. And so we have Bone mentioning to David that it's like, hey man, like, you're a candle in the darkness, uh like I appreciate you, kind of thing, that you kind of didn't go and snuff my guy out, kind of thing. So we have kind of respect between these characters, and this respect helps us out towards the end of the movie, where when just really David has nobody to turn to, he turns back to these guys. So we go on here, and we of course have this this 15 años, because I think I've covered everything else. So, or no, wait, there's a little bit more than that. We have to back up a little bit. God dang it. There's a little bit more than that. We can't just get to the 15 años just yet. There's a lot of legwork going on here. So we, after all of the kind of paper routing that David is supposed to do here to collect from everybody, Alexis is to tell David that they're $2,000 short, and they're of course short from Victor, the new guy. So we now have both Creeper and David going off to make their way to Victor, because Alexis is to get a call from the wizard, and when he calls them, like, he knows everything that's kind of technically going on, and reconfirming to them, like, hey guys, you better have my money, like, because I'm going to be trying to do some things with that, so you make sure you have my money. It seems like he knows, weirdly, because he's psychic, that they're going to be short somehow. And Alexis is mentioning that they have some kind of side money that they can possibly use for them being behind here. So, but both David and Creeper make their way to Victor to basically put a gun in his mouth to tell him, like, hey, where's my money? Like, you're $2,000 short, where is it? So all of a sudden we find out that Victor, who is stupid, had gone on to decide to just skim from the top. Basically, he took some money for himself and calls it a TV dinner for his wife to go and retrieve. And so David is like, you're taking money from me? What did I just tell you? What was that whole long stretch of speech of what I just told you? And so Victor is to mention that his daughter is to have leukemia, and so they're really not believing this story. They're just like, what's the girl's name? Like, what hospital is she in? Like, I want to know some facts so I can believe this story. So, you know what? David buys the story, and he's like, you know what? You know, Creeper, let's get out of here. Creeper is just kind of upset by what David had done there, where it's just like, hey man, like you got to realize that this is a business. Like, you got to realize that, like you got to really have it for this character where the one time that he goes soft, all of a sudden, like, everybody's gonna come out of the woodwork with these stories, and that they need money, and they would, and so, like, man, once you just start to get soft, like, it's never going to just go away. So, but then we have David, who's getting a call from Venom from Hillside, I believe it's Hillside, that they have supposedly 200 grand, I believe. And they're like, hey, let's go and pick up that money. Oh, yeah, like, definitely. Because we're going to freaking have them collect. And that's a big chunk of change. So Like, I don't know how they got that payout, but man, did they get it. So we have both David and Creeper make their way to a guy named Venom, who, of course, to go on and say some crap to David, and like basically talking about David's dad and so on and so forth. So we end up having David going and meeting a guy named Cornhole, or Cornhole. No, Cornejo. I'm sorry about ill pronouncing that. So this guy's basically say that he's like the new kingpin. He's like a big massive millionaire, and I'm like, oh god, like okay, this guy is like an intimidating character. I'll give him that. Um, like I'll give it to the actor that he presented a very intimidating character here. And this guy's to mention that it's like, well, yeah, like I'm gonna own everything now. Like I'm gonna take everything. Like I'm gonna come after everybody, and like if they ain't working for me, they're gonna be dead. So now David and Creeper are just like psh, whatever, right? So we go on and we go to this Quince Años, and so both David and Creeper are of course, kind of celebrating and whatever. And we have, of course, Uncle Lewis, who gives a big, massive envelope full of cash to this daughter, like, hey, like, happy 16th, girl. Big, massive envelope of money, to where Favi ends up seeing the envelope, and she's like, oh my god, like, good grief. So we go on and we have Creeper ending up talking about how he's never going to have kids from all the women he's sleeping with, because he has all these like condoms and he has all these like morning after pills and Plan Bs and all this other billion other things. And so when David is to sit and see, of course, David's sister, and she's talking about them when she slept with him, that she had gotten like a bunch of different STDs from him. And Creeper turns around and it's like, oh, okay, like, you know what, like, when you leave here, like, don't be surprised that your car is gonna be burnt down. And Delia is like, well, hey, if my car is gonna be burnt down, like, I came here by Uber, you stupid. So it's like, what are you burning down? Nothing. So we, like, after that whole thing there, we then end up having it to where eventually Uncle Lewis is to tell David that he's going to take care of this Cornejo kind of thing, and that he's going to be letting some air out of that guy's ass, so to speak. And so we go on and we have these guys leave. So we go on and we have, of course, David's sister, who is talking to David about his dad, and like, has he called him lately? It's like, and we end up finding out that his dad, towards the end of the film, is none other than the wizard guy that he's been talking to. And I was like, oh wow, like the guy who actually plays a wizard, because I figured out by the end of the film, like, oh yeah, I've seen him plenty of stuff, like NYPD Blue, like Dexter. I think he was in like the third or fourth season somewhere. Like, I saw this guy. Like, that was interesting. Like, I remember him in the Billy Crystal, the Billy Crystal movie, Running Scared. Yeah, played a drug dealer in that movie. Not that he was doing the same thing here, but so we go on and we, of course, have David, who is to kind of go on and talk to his wife and ask her while they're sleeping together. It's like, well, hey, like, tell me the story of like of how you like met me, because I know there's some story that you tell people to just kind of like win their hearts over or whatever, but like tell me the real story. Tell me why like you went to like meet up with me and be with me and whatever. And so it seems that Alexis is to have this story about her mother who had gotten beat up by her father. And so Alexis was to go and find out that David was to be a guy who could kill people. And so Alexis wanted to go to win over David, so that way David could at some point go and kill Alexis's father. But it seems that at the perfect time, Alexis's father had stopped drinking and never laid a hand on his daughter anymore. So I guess it just got to a perfect time where Alexis just still fell in love with David anyways. But after David is to really hear that story, he's like, well, everybody I know is to need something from me, and I thought that you were the one person that didn't need something from me. So kind of after that, David is kind of like souring on his wife, but like she tells him that she loves him. But like there's nothing that really comes out of this. It's just like we turn around and just have David just going like, oh well, like you're my wife anyways, but there's nothing I can do here. So we end up having both David and Creeper, who are to go to some club to talk to Cornejo, because we end up having them, of course, finding out that David's uncle is to be dead. And we had a whole moment where David was talking to his uncle, and his uncle was kind of slapping him around and like telling him that, like, hey man, you may think that you might be like all that and whatever, but you're just not really all that there yet. It's like we kind of have like his uncle kind of putting him in his place at one point in this film, and really that kind of exchange was kind of lost on me, just because I'm like, whatever, like let's get past this, because they're gonna work together anyways, because they're gonna have to, because this guy is gonna get dead supposedly, but his uncle ends up sadly being dead. We just see some head with fingers, and we just have to naturally assume that that's to be, of course, David's uncle who is dead, because they have to confirm this. So Cornejo is just like, hey man, there's nowhere for you to run, there's nowhere for you to hide. Like, I know where all your people are. So we go on and we turn around and have both David and Creeper, who of course are like, David is really with his family just going like, what the do we do? Like, should we run? Should we hide? What the are we going to do here? And so, like, we just have Alexis who's freaking out. She's like crying. She's like, what are we going to do? So we have David that's talking to Creeper and all of these men who are willing to like lay down their lives for David, and that they're all saying that they're like, hey man, we're gonna go after this guy, we're gonna kill him. And Creeper's like, hey man, we're gonna go after we're gonna have to go after this guy, and like we're gonna punch him until either we're dead or he's dead. We're gonna go after this guy. But all of a sudden, because we end up having a girl named Gata or I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that's. There might be a pronunciation difference here. So, because I'm like Gata sounds like the right name here, but I don't know. So, Galleta, Gata. I don't know. I don't think they ever say her name in this movie. So I'm gonna say Gata, and it might be ill pronounced. So I'm sorry. So Gata goes on and is to go at the Quinceaños and tell both David and Creeper to go off to meet with Cornejo. And so now we still have this same woman who is to go on with these masked men and shoot up all these guys while they're going on this meeting and catching these guys off guard, killing them all off. And so they end up going and grabbing, of course, Shia LaBeouf's character, Creeper, and so now David is like running home to his wife, telling her like, "Hey, we're gonna get all the kids and we're just gonna freaking run to some hotel somewhere." And so while David is going off getting his kids, wiping the blood off of his face, while his wife is consistently trying to wipe the blood off his face, all of a sudden David is to see this video of Cornejo going on and torturing his creeper. I don't know if it's his friend or his brother. I'm assuming it's his friend, right? You'd have to naturally assume that. So Creeper is getting his legs, I think, broken up with these hammers, and so we eventually go on and have Creeper just being tortured to death horrifically. And we have at one point where Cornejo is to use his foot and just go on and take his foot and just kind of snap Creeper's neck in an awful way just from going on and just like putting his boot just kind of like smashing against like this guy's head in a very vicious way, killing this guy, and just like he just keeps going on and smushing his boot into this guy's face, and you can just see the blood splattering all over the place. And so we of course have Alexis, who's like, "Is that Creeper?" It's like, yeah, it's Creeper. So we go on to this film, and so David is to get all of his kids, and they all go to this hotel, and so we end up also having that one like mixed martial artist moment where like David is trying to struggle to do this mixed martial arts move, but he ends up like armbarring the guy and having him tap later on. So that goes into the weird, bizarre-ish end of this film. So we end up having David, who is just trying to scramble to go and find Lupe's house and dig this thing of money out of her, out of her yard. This weird, massive barrel of money that I guess both David and Creeper at one point had gone to rob a bank once. And so there's a big, massive payout in this barrel that I guess David was to use if things like kind of got sour, and I guess this is the sourest time right now. So we have Lupe like telling David, it's like, well, hey, do you want me to ride with you? And David's like, no, I think we're fine. So David goes on and digs this money out and gets the money out and puts it in this briefcase. And so he ends up making his way back to his family, and that's when Cornejo goes through and starts I guess, murdering David's wife. When David makes his way back to the hotel calling for his wife, all of a sudden he ends up finally finding her in a bloodied mess. And he goes and has this very weird, bizarrish moment where he like goes into the tub with her and is just kind of mourning for her loss while being in the tub. This was just kind of odd, in all honesty. This kind of part here, but it is what it is. So he's just kind of mourning for his loss of his wife. Oh well, whatever. So he does it in a tub with both him and her inside of it. Okay, sure. So we now have David, who has no one to turn to, no family, no nothing. His uncle's dead. His father is in prison, being the wizard. So we now go on and we have David, who is to go to the only people he trusts at this point, who is now the Bloods. And so it seems that Cornejo is to have his two kids, and is telling him, like, hey, like, I'm going to dip these kids in acid unless you, you come to me. So we have David coming with these Bloods to rescue his kids, and, like, this is where the movie really, like, the last 30 minutes just kind of slows down. So we end up having one of the Bloods, who is boned, go on and, I think, kill Gata. Murders her. He gets stabbed in the leg. Murders Gata. So eventually David is to go on with a bunch of Bloods and shoot up a bunch of people. Then eventually find his kids. Then make it into going after Cornejo. So David goes off and kills Cornejo with weirdly kind of a Saw-like approach by taking this toilet lid and just bashing the crap out of him, because they're fighting weirdly in a bathroom for some odd reason. Kind of MMA style a little bit, where, of course, David is kind of remembering what he had learned from some mixed martial artist thing. And so where he's going to have to learn how to, like, counter this attack that Cornejo is doing here. So David counters this attack and then goes and freaking toilet lids him, kills him, murders him. Brutally, viciously. So after that, we just have, I think, David just freaking vanish. Gone. But the last thing that he does do is he pulls off to the side of the road. We also had the bone guy who's mentioned, like, hey man, ride or die, like, I'm gonna be with you forever. I'm like, well, okay, is he gonna, like, is David just gonna be one of the Bloods guy now? Is he just gonna join that establishment, let's just say? Would there be a sequel to this movie? Probably not, right? I don't think there will be. So it would be interesting if there was, but, like, I don't know, that this kind of second half just kind of I wouldn't think there would be. So we go on and we have David, who gets a call from his father, the wizard, telling him, hey man, like, now that you took out this guy, like, man, you have all the power. And David's like, well, I don't want all the power. Like, I wanted her. And the wizard's like, well, sorry. Like, hey, man, like, this chose you. So there's nothing you can do about it. So kind of after this phone call between the two of them, like, that's where this movie just kind of just dies after this conversation, where we just have David just on this endless loop where he's just going to continue to do this job no matter if he does it, no matter if he wants it or not. Like, it's forced upon him. So yeah, really, that's just where this movie just kind of fizzles out and just ends. You would have thought that David would have just taken his kids and just disappeared, gotten some fake IDs or something like that, and just got off somewhere, and just people would have never known. But yeah, so with that said, I think that does wrap up this movie. If there's something that I probably forgot, or if there's something that I didn't go further into, let me know in the comments below, because I'm sure there is something somewhere that I forgot about, because there's a lot to unpack through this movie, and I'm sure it kind of quickly rammed through it. But this is an hour and 30 minutes film, and I got through it in like 50 minutes, so good for me, because I was thinking I was going to go too heavy into details, but it seemed like this was simple enough. There was some kind of drug stuff that I didn't absolutely cover, especially with that beginning. With the whole, like, I covered the candy bar thing, but there was some kind of like secret hidden code going on in the weird part of candy bars and stuff like that. Is weird. But anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Kind of just on the tail end of my day also, and I should have gone to bed like 2 hours ago. But that is what it is when you're trying to just consistently delay trying to figure out what the heck you're going to watch for the last video of the day. So I'm going to go out of my way to get the heck out of here. So thank you for otherwise watching this. Thank you for otherwise going through any number of these things besides just this video. If you go on and do that, or if this is your end for watching any of my content, still thanks. I appreciate it. So with that said, I think I've covered everything. Just uh just overall, just interesting movie, but just not quite good enough. Just it kind of shows its budget a little bit, but also just the story of it just kind of like it's just started out good. It started out like some like real potential, but then it eventually just got further and further on, and the further it got, the weaker it got, the weaker the movie got. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Bye everybody. Bye everybody.